Right, so here's a little simple guide to float choice through the summer months when you're fishing for F1s. And I've got 5 floats here that will do all your F1 fishing during sort of the months from April through to sort of September time when the water's warm and the fish are feeding. Starting with my 2 floats, what I use when I'm fishing on the bottom. I keep it as simple as that, 2 different floats. Starting with any float that I'm using when I'm fishing from sort of 2 foot up to 6 or 7 foot of water, which is all your general fishing for F1s on any sort of venue, snake lakes, right through sort of open water. So that's an RW Maggie in a 1.7mm. I like the 1.7mm versions in the summer. You're going to be getting more indications, so you want a nice thicker tip so you can read your float better. Plus you might be fishing with bigger baits sometimes, 6mm pellet, 6mm meat, corn, baits like that, maybe a big bit of worm. Now I generally use the 4x12, the 4x14 and the 4x16. From 2 to 3 foot I tend to use the 4x12, and then I just step it up, so a 4 foot, 5 foot I'll use a 4x14, and then if I'm at 6, 7 foot probably a 4x16, unless I want a real positive float. If I'm fishing in a situation where I feel like I'm going to be fishing for lots of fish, I might just step the float up a little bit, so maybe 2 to 3 foot a 4x14, sort of 4 5 foot a 4x16, if that makes sense, just when you want a little bit more of a positive rig for catching more fish. The nice thing about these floats is they've got a carbon stem, so I feel like they're very versatile. You can fish them through the water a bit more. You can, use them for anything basically, and they're nice and durable. And then it's got a nice little round, like elongated slim body, which is like the popular pattern. Just does any type of bait, and like I say, a nice visible tip. Absolutely perfect for all your fishing on the bottom. Any baits from maggots all the way through to pellets, meat, corn. I'll just use them for everything basically, nice and simple. The next one, obviously when you're fishing in less than 2 foot of water, you need a bit of a shorter float. So that's where I tend to use the muddy, which is again a bit shorter. Now I only use the 0.4, basically only makes the 0.4 nowadays because that's the best size for all your fishing. You need something with a nice positive bulk. These take 6 number 8 stots, right above the short hook length. That's the perfect way to fish when you're fishing in shallow water, and you can get right against the banks. It's got a nice 2mm bristle. Again, when you're getting a few more carp coming in your peg, or them big F1s and the reel washing all your bait around, you want to make sure you're not foul looking fish and you're not striking at the wrong bite. So you've got that 2mm bristle. Nice glass stem again, just for durability. When it's in your net, sometimes you end up with them getting bent a little bit and you don't want them to snap, or you don't want them to sort of disfigure if you were to use a wire stem. So that's absolutely perfect for that. So that's basically all me on the bottom fishing covered in 2 floats. Now when you're shallow fishing, you need a few more different types of floats. Now generally when I'm fishing with a fixed floating rig, I find the best float for that is a little winter Maggie. Now that looks real delicate. It's a 3x8 winter Maggie. It's almost like the old 3x8 Chianti, what everyone used to use back in the day, but basically why it works so well is it offers very minimal resistance. A lot of the time, the reason why you have problems with sort of missing bites when you're fishing for F1s is they feel that resistance when they suck the bait in and they spit it out, and sometimes you might not even see bites at all if you have the wrong float. So a real nice little float, they literally take 3 or 4 number 12 strung out down the line. You can use that anywhere from sort of maybe 12 inches all the way to sort of 3 4 foot on the right conditions. So it's a brilliant float for all around shallow fishing for F1s. And don't be put off by the fact that it looks nice and delicate. It's still perfect for all your summer fishing when you're fishing sort of baits like maggots and casters. So we're here today at Martin Hall Fishery on the Pod Lake, and we've just filmed 2 masterclass videos for our members channel over on YouTube. The first one is about pellet fishing across on snake lakes, but more specifically how to get best out of sort of sprinkle type pots, or when you're tapping in hard pellets out of your little pots, and how to be more efficient so you're not having to come and ship in all the time and refill your pot, so you're tapping bait in and keeping fish coming in your peg all day. And that's really important and a real good way of fishing on these sort of lakes. The second type is about that later part of your session when you're coming in down the edge and using your clumping type pots. We've been using the Guru fast release pots today, and I'm showing you when to use each one to get the best out of that style of fishing and make sure you're coming back with some nice big F1s and carp every chuck in. So they're now live over on our members channel, so go and check them out. Then the next 2 floats are basically floats for the positive rigs, for sort of your self-hooking rigs. Now the first one is a new prototype float from Richie, and we've been using all sorts of different types of prototypes until we've found one that we really like, and this one's absolutely perfect. That's the RW OS which stands for overshotter. Now it's just a tiny little inline dibber. Now don't just think this is good for overshotting, you can also use this as a floating standard dibber as well. Take sort of 2-3 number 11 shot, which is absolutely perfect. You can just, you know, have them nice and bulked, or even spread them out a little bit for when you're fishing with a floating rig, or with sort of 4 or 5 number 10s down the line. They make the perfect overshotting float, which obviously sometimes it's to sort of comply with fishery rules that you're using overshot, you know, you're overshotting a float and using, you know, a float on the line. But also I just prefer to have a float on the line because I feel like it does help sort of slow the fall of your hook bait down. It sort of counteracts your shot a little bit. So that's what them are for, and they're absolutely perfect for that. You know, obviously being in line, you can't really get into any sort of tangles or anything like that, which when you fish with a real short little lash can sometimes be a problem. And again, they've just got a little short little stem. I think that's actually a black fiberglass stem on these, which we found works really well. Just helps, you know, us to keep the body size of the float down, because we've got a little bit of weight in the stem. It means you can have a tiny little body like that, and the float doesn't take loads of shot. And then we've just got like a real short little stem, because you only, when you're fishing real shallow, you're only really fishing up to maybe 14 inch if you're fishing with a floating rig with this float. So just real nice little short float, which is perfect for that. And then the final one is the jigger. Now that's a Richie Wilson 0.4 jigger. I do use the 0.25s and the 0.6 again, just so I can comply with fishery rules really. Obviously some venues state that you need to make sure that that float isn't sinking when it hits your stop. So depending on how deep I'm fishing, or sort of how windy it is, will depend on which one I'm using. Now I'd say the most commonly used one that I use is a 0.4. Which takes either, you could put, you know, varying different amount of shot on, but often now I use sort of 9 number 10s on this and then string it out in 3 little bulks. That seems to work best for me, but you can put sort of 5 number 8s on it, 6 or 7 number 9s, just see what you think on the day. But 9 number 10s for me, 3 little bulks. All that helps me to do is create a real tight line, so that when I'm lowering it through, I haven't got all the shot right by the hook to bomb everything down, but also I've got, you know, the shot sort of spread out on the line to help keep everything straight, so that again, you hook in the bite, the fish don't have a chance to sort of pick your bait up and spit it out and swim off. Again, all this is, a jigger is a float where the line slides through it, so you can lower down to the depth, flick it back up, lower it back down to the depth, and catch them crafty F1s. Particularly good on deep lakes when the fish are sat down quite deep, sort of 2 to 4 foot deep. That's the perfect float for that. So there you go, that's 5 floats that'll cover all your F1 fishing in the summer. Stick to that little guide and you won't go far wrong.